Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our masterclass focused on the concepts of C and their pivotal role in the MCQ rounds of hackathons, case competitions, hiring challenges, and placement processes. As we delve into the intricacies of C, where we cover some hot topics, then focus on pointers in STL as they are the most asked topics under C in your placement journey. We will also delve into previously asked questions in hiring challenges and processes of companies like Amazon, JustPay, and Agora, to name a few, through which you will gain insights that will help you in propelling your careers forward in the ever evolving landscape of technology and innovation. But before we begin the masterclass, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to share about Unstop and our one of a kind offering, the Unstop Pro, which we also call as the finishing school. Unstop is a talent engagement and hiring platform with over 8 million plus users from more than 42,000 colleges and companies. And Unstop Pro is a finishing school for getting a job, winning a competition, learning the right thing, getting the best value, choosing the right company, getting the right mentor for the right path, for the right career path, and for learning a new skill. With the Unstop Pro, you get access to 1000 plus hours of content in 65 plus courses, which are across domains like aptitude, technical skills, coding, interview preparation for companies like TCS, BCG, Amazon, etc. Our learners have validated the quality of our content with a rating of 4.5 on 5. We also have interview preparation courses, mock tests, and assessments to practice what you have learned. And then projects from companies like Amazon, American Express, Netflix, and Zomato. We also offer a handsome 15% discount on one mentorship sessions from industry experts from top brands. Just imagine being able to talk to mentors from your favorite brands like Google, Amazon, Flipkart, HUL, McKinsey, etc., who spent more than 2,500 hours connecting with unstoppable talent like you. We've also seen that pro users take 2 times more mentorship led guidance than non pro users and are hence better prepared and job ready. Finally, we also offer masterclasses by industry experts like this one. Having said that, I would now like to introduce you to the expert who would be taking the masterclass today. We have with us Ayush Chaube, who is currently working as a software engineer at Microsoft. He has previously worked with Coinbase, Pocket FM, and Anakin. He has completed over 100 hours of mentorship sessions and helped more than 200 students in getting hired and in cracking competitions. His connect with the learners has always helped them in a huge way as he shares his learnings and tips and tricks for being competition and job ready. With this, I hand it over to you, Ayush, to take this masterclass forward.
Thanks, Avinash. Hello, everyone. I hope all of you are doing really great. And I'm really glad that we have this chance to connect here and discuss about how to ace MCQ challenges and specifically about how we can learn about C++ and ace them. So without a further ado, I would just present my screen and we can then go through one by one what are the interesting topics that we need to do for acing these MCQ challenges. So, Avinash, can you confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right. So, before that, I would love to give a brief introduction of myself. So, as you know, I am a software engineer at Microsoft. I've completed my bachelor in technology from computer science branch. Previously, I've worked in organizations like Coinbase, Pocket FM, and even startups like Anakin. By now, I've mentored lots of students. Most of them have cracked impressive offers. What I love to do is I love to make complex problems, complex topics easy for you guys so that you can take help from that and excel in your careers. Now, today we've gathered here to discuss the importance of MCQ challenges. Uh, Before that, I would just love to throw some light here where we can see how different companies and different organizations conduct their hiring. If we start with Flipkart, you can see that we've got these multiple rounds here. We've got first round is e-commerce and tech quiz, which is mostly based on MCQ challenges, right? Then we've got idea POC demo, national finale, and all that. But if you look, the first and the most like bottleneck round here is still the MCQ challenges. If you look at Microsoft, Amazon, you can see that after a resume shortlist, they've got these screening tests, and we do have good MCQ challenges to deal with there. Below also you can see we've got multiple organizations like JustPay, Agoda, Goldman Sachs, DShaw, and all of these do have MCQ rounds, MCQ challenges. Now I think that gives us enough motivation and enough reason to give some importance and spare some time for separate preparation for these MCQ challenges. And today we've gathered for this one specific topic, which is C++, right? Now you know that I have mentored lots of students. I have personally attempted lots of challenges, cracked some of them. With that, I have observed that C++ remains to be one of the most asked topics here, if not the most, because it's the most fundamental topic, and big organizations, they expect that you need to understand this thoroughly, irrespective of which tech stack you would work in or what technology would you contribute in. So with C++, what will we learn today? Uh, I've jotted down these important topics, right? The hot topics that are most frequently asked. We'll go through them. We'll see what exactly do you need to know from that topic such that you ace in those challenges. So we'll first go through the fundamental topics. There are some hot topics that I've shortlisted for you, and we'll see what kind of MCQs comes there, and then what theory do we need to know before solving them. Then we'll go through pointers, right? Uh, After in pointers, we'll see what exactly is asked, and we'll end the session with STL. Now, after each session, you can keep posting your questions, and I would love to answer them at the end in our Q&A section. So let's start with fundamental topics. Now, I have figured out these five topics which are really crucial, right? And where you have some things which are a little confusing, and then organization loves, they love to throw problems which are based on these confusing topics and those subtopics. We have function overloading, operator overloading, Boolean concept, references, new and delete. So let's go through them one by one and see what's the catch in them. Now, we'll start with function overloading. We'll see the basics here. Now, in case you want to go through this topic in detail, at Unstop, we do have detailed course for this topic, and we have this for the subsequent topics as well. So if I would recommend that if you have time and if you are interested in learning, you definitely go and check out these topics here at Unstop. Coming back to our topic, so we've got function overloading, right? We know how it works. Basically, we have a function, we define it multiple times, and then we expect or we plan to have multiple uh, functions, multiple processes that we can do with that function, right? We could change the parameters, name, and return type accordingly to get different value from that same function name. Now there are 3 points and three specific things that I want you to know today, and then remember it all your life once and for all. That will help you in solving problems on this topic. So we've got name of the function, the parameters that we are passing, and the return type. If we know what is happening with each specific topic, sub area, we'll know how this function overloading is working. So what is up with the name of the function? So the thing is, all the definition of function overloading should have the same name, and which totally makes sense because otherwise you're just defining a new function. Okay. What about parameters? The number of parameters and the type of parameters can change. The catch here is that at least one of them should change. Either the number of parameters should change, or type of at least one of the parameters should change. Otherwise, again, it is just that same definition. What about return type? Now, the first two things, I think most of the people, they are pretty comfortable with that. For return type, I've seen many of my mentees struggling or being confused with that. So let me make this very clear to you. Return type may or may not change, right? But you cannot overload a function just on the basis of return type, right? This may or may not change with your respect to your definition, but the overloading that will be decided based on the parameters, again number of parameters or type of parameters, at least one of them. So these three points you should always remember, and if you do, there is no MCQ that you cannot solve. Let's kickstart our first MCQ here. This was previously asked in Just Pay Hiring Challenge. Let's see what it is. So the problem says which of the following is true regarding function overloading in C++. Let's go through them one by one. Overloading functions must have same return type. Okay, so I just told you return type may or may not change. So this is definitely wrong, wrong option. The second is overloaded functions must have different names. Again, doesn't make sense because name has to be same. Okay, overloaded functions must have different parameter lists. That makes sense, right? Overloaded function must be declared in different scopes. Nope, doesn't make sense. So let's go through the C option, which for now seems correct. Overloaded function must have different parameter list. What that means is that you have, let's say, one or more parameters, and that list in itself should be different, meaning that either the number of parameters are changing or the type of parameter is changing, which sets us that the C option is correct here. Moving on to the next problem, which was previously asked in Agoda. There's a famous competition code Agoda. So in function overloading, how does the compiler differentiate between overloading function? All right, again, very fundamental problem. So here what you need to think is, if you've written a compiler that is trying to differentiate between two functions, two overloaded functions, what is exactly that would tell us that okay, these two are different definitions? First option says function name. Obviously not true because function name will be same among all the definitions. Wrong option. By return type, again I just mentioned that return type may or may not change. Definitely not a parameter for overloading. All right. Third option, by number and or types of parameters. This makes sense, right? Because either you change the number of parameters or type of parameters. So this is the correct answer. But let's go through this last option as well, which is by the order of parameters. Now this problem is a little confusing with this when it says by the order of parameters. But let me make this clear to you. When we say that by the order of parameters, it actually what it implies is that type of parameters would change, right? But then the order would change. So you would have different names. Let's say you've got in one definition, you've got int a, int b, and then in next definition, you say int b, int a. That is what this problem means when it says by the order of parameters. Again, this would result in an error because compiler would not know which definition are you calling. So the answer here is C, and definitely be aware for this option. Let's go through this another problem, which is which of the following is not a valid example of function overloading? Let's go through these definitions and try to draw out what's happening. So we've got void print. Okay, name is print. In the first definition, the parameter is int num. Okay, in the second definition, we've got again return type is void, name is print, which is same. The type of parameter changes here. So we know that okay, this is a valid example of function overloading. What we need to find is the definition or the option where it is not. So A is not the answer. What about B? We've got int sum. Okay, so sum here also int sum, return type is same, name is also same. What about the parameters? Here we've got two parameters, here we have three parameters. So this is also an example, hence not a correct option. What about this one, C? So we've got double calculate, return type is double, name is calculate, name is same. But if you see the parameters, they are exactly same, right? Parameters have to change, otherwise uh, this is not function overloading. Compiler won't know that which definition are you calling, and that's why this will result in an error. Let's go through this D option. In D option we can see that okay, name is again same, but it is pretty clear that type of parameter is changing, and that's why this is not the correct answer. So here we've got C as the correct option. Again, what I would recommend you, what I would suggest you is, do not get confused with the return types. It may or may not change. What you have to focus on is the name of the function and the parameter list, right? This I think gives us pretty much idea about what you need to know in function overloading. I mentioned 3 points, and if you're clear with them, you'll be able to solve all the MCQs based on this topic. The next hot topic that we have here is operator overloading. Let's go through this and let's see what the basics are. What we do in operator overloading is we've got multiple operators, we've got plus, minus, equals to, and a lot of them. We redefine their behavior, right? And we do that so that we can make out more functionality from them. So by default they would have some specific functionality, but we can introduce into our classes some more functionality that would make the code more intuitive and clean. How it works, so what we do is we make our classes and we define special member functions for those overloaded operators, and then in that function we define that what exactly do we need to bring out of this. So I have just we've got this example here. Let's say we've got a class point. This has got two member function x and y, here representing your 2D coordinates, right? The way we overload this is we make this function, which member function, which returns the same object point, and we specify this operator keyword. This is necessary, followed by the operator that we are overloading. Again, this what we pass is a const object of that same class, and then we can define what we want to do with this. Here what we are doing is we are simply adding x coordinates of one object, I mean both the objects, and then y coordinates of both the object, and then returning that. So what we are able to do here is we are able to add, now by default we need to add p1.x plus p2.x, then p1.y plus p2.y, which may look a little cluttering, but through this operator overloading we are able to do that in a very simple manner. Now this was all fine with operator overloading. The point where I want you to draw your attention is increment operator. So we know how it works, right? Now in MCQ challenges, obviously we wouldn't be required to implement that or code that. What I need you to focus on is the increment operator, because this is very commonly asked question, right? And a lot of people, lot of students, they make mistake here. So let's see what this is. We've got two plus operators, which we call it as increment operators, and then there are two behaviors that it projects when we use it differently. So we've got this first place where we have I plus plus. Again, what increment operator does is it simply increases your integers value by 1, as simple as that. But then the two places where it behaves differently is whether you are doing increment post, or whether you are doing it pre. Post increment is the second one, and then this third one is the pre increment. Let's see what behaviors do we get here. Now when you do post increment, so wherever you will be using this whole value in any expression, it will first use the default value and then increment it. Now in the second case where you're doing pre-increment, it will first increment the value and then use it. So let's take an example here and see how it behaves differently. Now this is a very frequently asked question, and there is some catch in this. Let's see what happens here. So we've got this integer I, which is initialized with value 5. Okay, and what we are trying to print here using cout is this expression, which is I plus plus multiplied by plus plus I. So let's see what is happening here, and then let's see what's the answer. When you're writing I plus plus, what happens is that whatever is the default value of I, that will get used in this expression as it is. It won't care what is happening after that. So if you see this, if you look at this expression, 5 has already been placed here. After placing 5, it increments it. So what it becomes later is 6. All right, okay. So you're trying to multiply 5 here with some value here. Let's figure out what that is. So now the value is 6, and what you are doing here is pre-incrementing this 6 value. So again, here stuff happens differently. You increment it, so it becomes 7. From 6 it becomes 7, and then you use it in the expression. So the value that comes here is 7 and not 6. So what the expression becomes is 5 into 7, and thus the answer here is 35. So again, it is not some rocket science. The basic idea is very simple, that if you are doing post increment, use the value first, then increment. If you are doing pre increment, increment the value first, then use it. So This marks the answer as C, which is 35. All right, this was about operator overloading. Again, the crux here is about this increment operator that you need to be very clear with it. And you'll like in case you attempt MCQ challenges, you will definitely find one or more problems based on this one. Moving on to this third thing, which is Boolean. So what made me include this is basically this problem which I've seen numerous times in like lots of MCQ challenges, which is pretty simple, but I've seen and like lot of my mentees struggling with this. Even I was really confused about this one initially. So let's go through this the basic idea here. The importance that Boolean data type has in C++ is that the predecessor of C++, which is C, by default does not has this. In C, there is no default Boolean type. If you want to use Boolean, you have to either include stdbool.h or the standard or the old way, which is using integers 0, 1 value. Remember that in C, there is no default Boolean type. And the problem, which is pretty simple, is which of the following data type is supported in C++ but not in C. Most of the students, they go and they mark the option as double or float, which is not the case. The answer here is Boolean, because by default Boolean is not in C. Always remember this. Moving on to references. Now let's go through some basic idea and see how and what exactly do we need to know from references. Now in C++, we have a special concept of references. What it is an alternative name for an existing variable. What that means is that when you're defining a reference to a variable, you are simply making not you're not making a copy to it, you're just having a different name for it. How it helps is that it provides us a way to access same memory location but with different name according to our need. Let me just give you a quick example here. So what's happening here is that there are two things that we need to know here. What is happening in main is that we've got this variable value which is initialized with 5. Then we declare a reference variable. How do we declare it? We use this ampersand sign. We declare a reference variable to this value. We pass this variable into increment function, which is defined here. Let's see what is happening here later, and then we try to print the value of this variable value, the original variable, not the reference variable. All right, what's happening in increment function is that we get a parameter num, we call it as num, and then we increment it by 1. Now notice here that there are two things that are happening. The first one is that we are declaring a reference to a variable, and the second one is that we are passing this variable by reference. Again, there are two ways to pass variables. We pass them by either value or we pass them by reference. Here we are passing by reference, so it doesn't make a separate copy of this variable. It just passes that variable as it is. Again, it's reference and not its copy. So when we try to print the value, normally we expect that this would not change, right? Because uh, either we are not clear with what is happening here with the reference, or we are not clear with what happens when you call or pass any parameter by reference. So the answer here will be 6. It won't be 5, because reference is, again, it is same as value, it is not a different thing. And when you're calling this function, when you're passing this value, you're passing the reference and not a copy. So this the question, the golden question that we hear is whether this will change or not. The answer is that it will change and the value will become 6. All right, that was about references. Again, what you need to know is about how call by reference works and how this reference variable works. Moving on to new and delete. Again, all these topics you can find them at Unstop. You can see detailed courses about them, but let's go through them and how these are important to us. So in C++, we've got these two keywords, new and delete, and the way we use them is to dynamically allocate memory. So we use new keyword to allocate memory. That happens from heap, and then we use delete keyword to deallocate that memory. The point where I want you to draw your attention to is how it is different from what we do in C. In C, we've got malloc and we've got free. Now, difference between C procedure of using malloc and free versus new and delete that happens in C++ is that is based on these 3 points. These 3 points that you should be very clear with. The first one is return type. What happens when you use malloc to allocate some memory? You get some block of memory, but that does not have any type. So it returns you a void pointer to that memory. While in new, you do specify that what you want, whether do you want an integer pointer or you want string or whatever. So the return type in both of these is different. In malloc, it is void, while in new is it is what you specify. What about the initialization? So initialization is a little complex in malloc. You have to tell it how much memory do you want in bytes, and that's why you have to use the size of operator. While in new, you just specify that what type of variable do you want, and it does that for you. The third one and the most important one is failure handling. Okay, what would happen if by any chance you try to create some memory in C using malloc, but you don't have any extra memory, or there is some error so that it could not give you that memory? What would happen then? Now in C, it would give you null pointer, right? It won't throw an explicit error or something like that, and you would discover that later in your process. In C++, what would happen is that it will result in an exception, and there itself you know that something has gone wrong. So always remember how failure is handled between new delete versus malloc free. All right, that was all that about the fundamental hot topics that you need to know before attempting these MCQ challenges. Let's now move to pointers. Um, Pointers is again a very important topic. Most of my mentees, they struggle in first understanding the pointers, and even though some of them understand it, they make silly mistakes here. So today we'll debunk this. We'll see what exactly do you need to know to correctly attempt all these MCQs. Let's go through the basics. What pointers are? Pointer is nothing but it is a variable, right? But that variable is attached to some already existing variable, and what that knows about that existing variable is its memory address, right? So every variable in C++ is stored in some memory block, right? Pointer variable knows that okay, what's that memory block for that variable. So always a pointer is attached to some variable, or it is null. And what about the declaration? To declare a pointer variable, we use asterisk symbol, and then we either attach it to or point it to some variable, or we let it be null. This is how you initialize it. So let's say you've got a variable x which has default value 10. What we do is integer asterisk pointer equals to ampersand x, which is reference to this variable x, and now this pointer is pointing to x. All right. So with this information, let's try to attempt an MCQ and let's see what could go wrong here. So let's say we've got an integer with a value of 5. It is residing at some random address, let's say 1000 in memory. Okay. Now we've got a pointer p which is pointing to a, right? So p knows what is the address of a. Got it? Now they are telling that the address of p is again some random value which is 3450. Okay. Till now what we know is that there's a variable with value 5, and it is residing at address 1000. Okay, there is a pointer p which is pointing to this variable, and then we know what is the address to that variable. The third thing that we know in the story is that there is a separate pointer p1 which is pointing to p. So now this p is a pointer to an integer, and this p1 is a pointer to a pointer, which is slightly different, right? And then we know what is the address of p1, again a random value which is 2890. The question here is, what will be the value of asterisk p1, right? What will be the value of asterisk p1? So what happens is, when you use in any expression, or if you try to print, when you simply print ptr or the pointer variable, it will give you the address, right? And when you use asterisk symbol, it will dereference it and it will give you the value. So if I try to print p, it would give me the address 1000, right? Which is of value of a variable 5. But if I do asterisk p, it will dereference it, and it will tell me the value 5. Got it? Pretty simple. Now you need to apply the same thing on p1. If by default I try to print p1, it will give me the address to that variable which it is pointing to, which is 3450. And if I use asterisk p1, it will dereference that, and then it will point to the to what p is pointing to, which is not pointing to, but the value of p, which is 1000. Again, by default, p stores the address, which is 1000. So asterisk p1 would store the value of p, which is 1000. So again, nothing special here. It is just that a nested level of pointers is here. All you need to know is that asterisk p1 will be the value or dereferenced value, and p1 will be the address of variable that it is pointing to. So the answer here will be 1000, which is option D. And again, pretty simple, because p1 is pointing to p and the address to which p is pointing to is 1000. So 1000 will be the answer here. All right. Let's see this another question here. Again, very tricky problem. And let me just tell you at the point where everyone makes mistakes. So we've initialized this pointer asterisk ptr new int 5. So ptr is pointing to a variable 5. Okay. Then we have this function definition, which is change pointer ptr. What's happening here is that we pass this ptr and then we assign it to a new memory location where the value is 10. Okay, and then we try to print what is the value, right? Later we are deleting that value, but doesn't matter what's happening later. Now the question here is that the golden question here is that will this value change or not? If you know it will change, the answer will be 10. If you know, if you think it will not change, it will be 5. So let's see what is happening here. Again, the first intuitive thought here is that since we are changing sending the pointer, so again, pointers work through addresses, so somehow it should change, right? It should change this value, and then when we later try to print the value, it should come out as 10, which is not the case here, and let me tell you why. Remember, pointer is just another type of variable. It is nothing special. The only difference is that it is points to some other variable, but at the end of the day, it is still a variable. And if you look closely here, we are passing it by value and not by reference. There is no ampersand sign here. If we would be passing it by reference, this would have been changing, but since we are passing it by value, it will not change. What will happen is that we'll make a copy of this variable here, change it there. Once this call is over, it will delete it, and this pointer will point to the original position only, which was 5, and thus the answer here will be 5 and not any other option. So hope that makes it clear to you about what happens in pointers and what happens when you send them by value or by reference. All right, let's. So this was one very important thing that I wanted to point out. The other important thing is pointer arithmetic. What happens when we try to increment or decrement pointer values? Let's take an example here. Um, so let's say we've got this array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What happens when we try to declare a pointer to an array? Again, very basic idea here is that a pointer to array is not, it doesn't represent that whole array. What it represents is the first element of that array. It represents the 0th index of that array and nothing else, right? So when we try to increment the values, we go further and further in the array and nothing else happens. Now all of you know that array is a contiguous blocks of elements, right? So by default, when we try to print the value of this pointer, it will be the first element. Now what happens when you try to increment it? What will happen is that it will, the pointer, since it is an integer pointer, it will increment it by those many bytes as as much bytes are required for an integer, and it will end up going to the next element in the array. So initially it was at 1. When you try to increment it, it will go to 2. If you do that again, it will go to 3, 4, and 5, and so on. So that is what happens when you try to increment pointer values in case of arrays. Let's see a problem here. Pointer is ptr is a pointer to a double, and they are telling us that size of an is an operator in C++, which tells us about how many bytes a data type has. So what that means is the type of the size of double in bytes is 8. The question here is, what is the result of ptr minus 1? Okay, let's go through the options one by one. The address of double element before ptr, okay, may be correct, may not be correct. The address of double element after pr, see, we are decrementing here, so anything that says after is by default correct. So b is by default incorrect, so b is incorrect. Okay, what about ptr decremented by 1? Not clear what is 1 here, right? Is it the value, is it bytes, is it size? So again, c is also not correct. ptr decremented by 8 bytes. kind of makes sense here, right? Now what is wrong with the first option? Let's see that. What it says is the address of double element before ptr. Now the thing is, we don't know that before this variable, what value do we have? This is not an array, right? We are not in middle of an array of double. We don't know what is there, so we cannot be sure that the element before this would be a double or what it would be. What we can be definitely sure about is that it will get decremented by 8 bytes, because size of double is 8 bytes. So definitely the answer here is D. Again, the option A was there to make things complicated and to make us get confused, but be very clear with what happens when you try to decrement or increment it. It gets incremented or decremented by those many bytes of the type of pointer it is. So again, the answer here is D. Very important question. Moving on to this next problem, what is happening here is that we've got this array and we have this ptr which is a pointer to this array. Again, by default it is pointing to the first element, which is 1. Let's see what is happening later. In the second step, we've got a pointer to this pointer. So first we have a pointer to an array, then we have pointer to that pointer. What will be the output of this statement? So we've got an asterisk and inside the brackets we have another asterisk ptr plus 2. What would happen here? Let's debunk this. What is ptr? If I remove all these two asterisks, it is simply address of ptr, right? Let me just call this double ptr and let me call this ptr. So double ptr by default without any asterisks is simply the address of ptr. If I add one asterisk here, it would become asterisk double ptr. Then it would represent the value of this ptr, which is the address of this array, right? Because the value of ptr is the address of this array, the first element. All right, got it. So here it is simply written ptr. Asterisk double ptr represents basic ptr. Okay, what is ptr plus 2? Remember, when we try to increment by 1 or by 2, it goes further by 2 or that many amounts of steps. So what it will point to is this third element, which is 3. Okay, then at the end, so again at this point inside the brackets we've got address of 3. We don't have the value yet. After we add this another asterisk, this address gets dereferenced, and at this point we have this value 3. And it is due to these steps that we are able to say that okay, the answer here will be 3, because um, because we've got the end asterisk which simply converts everything whatever inside to the different dereference value, which is the value. So hope that makes sense. And again, a very confusing question. Many times people students think that this may result in compilation error or any sort of error, but this thing, it is perfectly correct, and the answer here will be 3. All right. So yeah, that was all that I wanted to point out for pointers. A very important topic. You can check out the course here. We've got detailed course on pointers at Unstop. If you like, if you're interested, you can go through that and be very clear with that. Moving on to the next important subtopic here that we have, which is STL. What is STL? STL is standard template library. It is a powerful, what it actually is that it gives you predefined classes, functions, and that you can use to solve basic problems, but in a very easy manner. You don't have to redefine all those already existing algorithms and function. Now, this is a very vast topic. If you are into competitive programming or you solve problems in DSA problems in C++, you might be knowing that. But people who use different language may skip this, and that's why I want you to draw some attention on this topic. Now, again, like I told you, it is vast, but there are three things that you need to know here. The first one is how containers work, right? And there are some special containers that you need to be aware about how they work, what special value do they add. So we'll go through containers, we'll go through iterators. For iterators, you just need to know how they are useful, and that will be enough. And then we'll see some famous algorithms and how they are called, how we use them. Starting off with containers. So I have written down here the most important containers that you need to be aware about. You must be witnessing these in other languages like Java as well. So the first one is vector. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll go through each container one by one and I'll tell you what value it adds. because you can see this problem many times coming in MCQ challenges about what makes a container special. Starting off with vector. Okay, vector, let me tell you in one line what vector is. Vector is basically an array, but the value that it adds is that it is a dynamic array. You can add and remove elements accordingly. The problem with array is that it is fixed size. Remember, you have contiguous blocks of elements, and you have to tell the compiler that what is the size of array that you want. But in vector, you can do that according to your need. You can increase the size, you can decrease the size. What about lists? Lists are simply an implementation of doubly linked list here, so that you don't have to implement it again and again by yourself. What is deck? So deck, let me tell you what deck is. Deck is kind of a double-ended queue. So what you can do is you can add elements at the top as well. You can add elements at the end or at the bottom as well. What is set? Set is a collection of unique elements, and it is ordered by keys. Now in set, similar to set, we have map. The difference between map and set is that in map also you have keys, but for each key you have a value that that keys represents. And obviously you'll have unique keys, and each key would be mapped to any value. There is no rule on what the values would be as long as the key are unique. Now, let me tell you, in set and map, there are two types of these. You've got set, which is by default order, and you've got unordered set. Similar to map, you've got the default map, which is ordered, and then you've got the unordered map, which is not ordered. What you need to know here is that in ordered set, the way internally C++ implements is using binary trees. To be specific, it uses red black trees, which are a good implementation of binary search trees, and that is how it stores them in sorted way. You can search, you can insert in big O of log n time. Same thing happens in map. You've got it ordered, and internally it uses an implementation of binary search trees, which is known as red black trees. You don't need to go into the depth of how red black trees work or something like that. You just need to know that. What happens in case of unordered set or unordered map? Always remember, unordered set and unordered map, first thing, won't be ordered, won't be sorted. Second thing, they are implemented by using hash tables and not binary search trees. What that gives an advantage to you is that asymptotically, again asymptotically, in on an average, the time complexity for searching and insertion will be constant since they are using hash tables. So that was all you need to know about set and maps. What about stack and queue? So stack and queue are your standard data structures. You've got an implementation for the same in C++, and you can use it very easily. What about iterators? See, iterators are basically your pointers to your objects, to your containers. The thing is that they hide the internal implementation and make us easier to iterate or to go through different elements in an object or in a container easily. Right? We can do that in sequential manners, and they provide us a uniform way to access elements. That is all you need to know about iterators. They are simply pointers to your containers. Moving on to algorithms. So by default, C++ in STL library gives us some algorithms, and we need to be aware about what those algorithms are and what they do. We've got algorithms for sorting, right? Sort, stable sort, partial sort. We've got same for searching, binary search, count. The most important one here that I want you to know is the accumulate one. I've seen this MCQ for accumulate coming multiple times, and the problem with this is the name is not very intuitive to what it does. What accumulate does is that it adds the elements of your container, and what you need to provide is the initial value, which usually would be 0, and then you can get the sum of all the elements in a container. That is all you need to know about algorithms. Let me go through some very important problems that you need to be aware about based on the previous topics. So the first one is, what is the time complexity of finding an element in an unordered map? Okay, this was asked in Flipkart Grid Challenge. So now that you know how unordered map are implemented using hash tables, in one way, directly you can tell, okay, it will be constant. But that is not the correct answer here. What they are emphasizing on is the worst case scenario. What you need to know here is that hash tables, in worst case, they end up giving us big O of n time complexity based on a concept called collisions. Again, you don't need to understand exactly how collisions work. What you need to know is that due to collisions, in worst case scenario, we get big O of n time complexity, because for each key it tries to find same uh, position in the hash table, but it fails again and again, and there is some scenario where this could happen possibly. So the answer is not big of one constant or not log n. There is no reason why any unordered map or set would anyway be related to log n time complexity. So the answer is big of n. Okay, what is the primary advantage of using map over an unordered map? Again, this is also been asked in many interviews also, that if you by default have unordered map, which is which asymptotically gives you constant time complexity for insertion and deletion searching, why would you need map? The answer is pretty simple. Map uses binary search trees. The keys are sorted. So if you want to iterate in a sorted order, if you want to find lower bounds, upper bounds, you would definitely prefer using a map. So the answer here is that elements are stored in a sorted order. All right. Now this we have this problems. We have this function, substring function, and most of the people I meet, they're always confused about the parameters that we pass here. Okay, so the code that we have here is, we've got this main function where we have a string str, which is unstop, right? And what we are trying to print here is str.substring function 1 comma 3. The golden question here is that what does this 1 3 represent? Many people, they are confused that it represents starting index, ending index, or it represents like something else. But let me break this through you to you, and remember this today for once and for all. What here it means is that 1 will be the starting index, makes sense, but this 3, it won't be the starting index. It would simply be how many characters do you want, starting from the first index, right? So remember, it is not the ending index. What it actually is that how many characters do you want. With that information, let's try to find the answer. So what 1 represents here is the first index. The first index is n, because again we have got 0 based indexing. So the first index is n, so the answer will be starting from n. What that makes us do is simply eliminate these two options, right? A and C are definitely wrong here. Okay, what does that 3 represent here? I told you 3 represents number of characters and not the index where it will be ending, right? So number of characters will be 3 here. So you eliminate the fourth option, which is NSTO, and you end up having this NST as the answer, which based on what we discussed here. So yeah, these were all important topics that I wanted you guys to know from SC++. My whole idea is again simple, that what through in our proper preparation, what we need to be is efficient. You can always learn a thick book and be good in MCQs, but what will make you smart is doing less and getting more. So again, always try to you know study less and get more. Now I'm not asking you to work less hard or spend less time. What I'm asking you to do is be more efficient. What you can do for that is figure out those important and hot topics and study them so that you get most impact. For that, you can always reach out to me. You can always connect to me. Here is my email address. You can always have a session with me here at Unstop. Reach out to me at LinkedIn, and we can always figure out a plan, a way where you can get most impact from your studying sessions. So we covered lots of topic here. I hope you learned a lot from that, and make sure that you develop this approach in your preparation, that you try to see what is the most efficient way in which I could study. So yeah, thank you guys. I would love to give control to Avinash here, and that was all from my side.
Thanks so much, Ayush, for this uh, very informative session where we not only touched upon a lot of concepts of C++, but we also saw some previously asked questions. We do have a few questions in chat. I think the first one is, so there's a learner who wants to practice DSA in C++, and they're asking if that's for beginners. So we do have that course as an expert level, but if you can, tell them why it is considered, as a part of expert level and not intermediate or beginner.
Yeah. Um, So the thing is that C++ is a little different language from Python and JavaScript, which I think people usually start their journey with it. C++ is a low level, relatively low language. So you need to go through a lot of topics if you want to get comfortable with C++, and that is what it makes a little expert topic. But I would definitely recommend to go through that and to start your DSC journey with C++ because it gives you more insight to what happens at lower level and makes your concepts better.
Okay, thank you. I think the second question here is, and this is not from the MCQ perspective, but they're asking from in the STL, when would you prefer to use STD double colon array over STD double colon vector and vice versa?
Okay. Yeah. So, like we know, we've got array and vector. The difference between the two is that for vector, you can dynamically allocate memory at your need, right? It is not fixed. So, in any scenario where you are pretty sure that you'll be using this much amount of memory only, you'll be fixed with the size of your container. You should use array because it will be more memory efficient, more space efficient. But in case you're not sure about how many elements you'll be using, then you can use vector.
Okay, thanks so much. The next one is, what are some best practices to follow when overloading operators?
Yeah, so that's a good question. What are the best practices to follow when overloading operators? See, the whole point of operator overloading is that using operators to make your code more intuitive, right? As a software engineer, after working on a lot of projects, lot of technology, what I see is the best code is the one which speaks for itself, right? You don't have to understand it, you don't have to take a session from someone to understand it. So my point here is that use those operators that would make your code simpler to understand and more intuitive, so that someone when reads that code instantly knows what's going on there.
Okay, thanks so much. The next question is it okay to implement all concepts of C++ in a project which is console based and add it to the resume? Are they really valued?
Okay, so the thing is, now mostly what I see, yeah, and even myself, we make projects which are sort of high level: e-commerce websites, Netflix streaming platform, video call options. So for this project where you are implementing all the concept of C++ in a project which is console based, you can definitely add it in your resume. It will portray that you've got low level language of knowledge of C++. The point that I want to bring here is that there are lots of companies like uh, Synopsys, C++, essentially hardware companies, where all of the code is written in low level languages like C++. For those companies, this project would make you stand out. But again, in general, I would also recommend to have some high level projects that would make it that high level technologies in front end, back end, cloud, and that all of those technologies.
Okay, so there are two questions and they're interrelated, so I'll ask them in one go. Can you explain the differences in ordered and unordered sets and maps with their time complexities?
Yeah. All right. So let's go one by one. Let's start with sets. The way ordered sets are implemented is using binary search tree, right? Red black trees we call them. So time complexity for insertion, searching, and deletion will be big of log n, right? Because internally it is using binary search tree and there the complexity is like that. When you are using unordered set, it is using hash tables. So insertion, searching, and deletion would take up constant time. Again, that is asymptotically. In practice, that changes based on what kind of values we are using. But on paper, asymptotically, it will be constant. Same thing for map. If you've ordered map, it will be log n for insertion, deletion, searching. If it is an unordered map, it will be constant, big of constant time complexity.
Okay, I think there's a question that has come in once again, which is if you can, reiterate once again the programming languages to go with DSN, which is the best as per you.
Okay, so personally, I had started with C++ only. I recommend everyone to first go through C, what's happening there, and then make C++ as your go-to language. Because many companies, they might have Python as, like, when you give online assessments or online tests, they might have Python, they might not have. They might have JavaScript, they might not have. C++ is that one language which will be there always. I have never seen any online assessment, any coding challenge where you do not get C++ as an option. So that will help you, because let's say you start with using Python, there is no wrong in that, but you may end up being in an online assessment where Python is not a language. So even though you might be very good with solving that data structure problem, but since your favorite long language is not there, you might struggle. So yes, I would recommend C++.
Thanks so much. And before I take the last question, I think that was also one of the reasons that we started this journey with a masterclass on C++. Oh, by the way, we've got two questions, and these are last two questions that we'll take. In what way can pointers compromise the security in C++?
Okay, so what happens is that in C++, which is a relatively low level language, there is not much security with your memory and all that. So what you need to do when you are using pointers is you need to write that extra code for making sure that there is no memory leak. In case you do not delete that memory using delete keyword, or in any other case, what that compromises is that in case of memory leaks or some exception, there could be a risk for security. When you use languages like Golang and other languages, there you don't have a high level or a basic structure for pointers. They do it differently using iterators or other variables, and internally in their libraries they do have that code. So that would be the difference here.
Okay, thanks so much. And I'll take up the last question, which is what are the current front end and back end technologies being used in the industry that learners can learn?
Yeah, so this is a very good question. Now, whenever someone says front end, the one word that comes into my mind is React. Literally every other company is using React. They were previously using Angular, but most of them have shifted to React. So I would definitely recommend for front end, go through React. If you are very good with it, get your hands dirty on Next.js. That will be really good, because Next.js simply React with some added functionality and some better features. For backend, it is not very, the market is not does not has a such monopoly in case of React. For backend, I started my journey with Django Python framework. In my different experiences, some in many places I've used Golang, in some places I've used Spring, which is a Java framework. So I would recommend you to explore the frameworks, and the one which you like, the one which you are more the one which you think that is more effective, go through that. But the most popular one, if I want to pick out, would be Spring, Java Spring. Most companies are using that. The thing is that they are migrating over different frameworks, some to Python, some to Node, or Django and all that. But again, Java Spring would be my number one choice.
Okay, thanks so much, Ayush. And I would also like to share, Ayush did show you a few courses that were on Unstop. It is in Unstop Pro, which is our finishing school. And we also have a course on full stack development on the Unstop Pro. So thank you so much, Ayush, for putting the deck together, for researching it well, getting in the questions from various placement uh, processes, and from hiring challenges, and in fact from hackathons as well. I'm very sure that the learners have taken away a lot today. And all of you who would like to speak to Ayush, please do go to Unstop and book a mentorship session with him. Thanks so much, Ayush, once again.
Yeah, thanks Avinash, thanks everyone.
So everyone, we come back to the Unstop Pro, which is an offering that we have, and I'll just take a couple of minutes to talk about Unstop and Unstop Pro once again before we end. So Unstop is a talent engagement and hiring platform with more than 8 million users from 42,000 plus colleges and companies. The Unstop Pro is a finishing school that helps you in a variety of ways. It helps you in, getting a job, winning a competition, learning the right thing, getting the best value, choosing the right company and the right mentor, and also learning some new skills. With the Unstop Pro, you get access to 1,000 plus hours of content in 65 plus courses, which are across domains like aptitude, technical skills, coding, interview preparation, etc. And our learners have validated the quality of our content with a rating of 4.515. We also have interview preparation courses, mock tests, and assessments to practice what you've learned, and projects from companies like Amex, Netflix, and Zomato, to name a few. We also offer a 15% discount on one-on-one mentorship sessions from industry experts from top brands. For example, Google, Amazon, Flipkart, HUL, McKinsey and Company. And these mentors have spent more than 2,500 hours connecting with unstoppable talent like you. All the pro users take close to 2 times more mentorship led guidance than non pro users and are hence better prepared and job ready. And we also offer masterclasses by industry expert like the one you just attended. So do go on Unstop, do check out the Unstop Pro, and do take the subscription to be job ready. Thank you so much once again.